All right, guys, I'm over here with John D. Domenico, and I got to tell you, you guys are in for a treat today because this is a quite special episode. And let me go ahead and put a gallery view on real quick for the audience who's going to be watching us, and take it from this point on. John is, I don't even know. I'm going to kind of let him describe himself because he's got a lot of things going on. But I could tell you where I got introduced to John, and he wasn't wearing the face that he's got on right now. He was a Trump impersonator at a speaking conference that I was at for the mortgage industry. It was in Tampa just last month in June. We're here end of July. And John was the guy who went on right before I did, actually warmed them all up for me. And he was representing Donald Trump. And this guy was spot on. So like, if you're ever in the market for somebody who can do a Donald Trump impersonation or just basically represent Donald, who's not Donald, you need this guy right here. But I want to get into the background. Everybody who's listening to this channel is going to kind of know where I'm going to go with this. I want to dig into the background of John and find out what's his strengths, what he's overcome, what are the things that he's doing now. He's already told me he's into a lot of reading and professional development and things of that nature. So let's unpack John right now. But John, tell the audience, what do you do? And we'll certainly share the links of where to go, but you might as well hit them with a link right up front. So in case anyone wants to drop
you can go to my website. It's thejohnnydshow.com. So it's JOHNNYD. So it's two N's and an H. People always mess that part up. The Johnny D Show. You can find me there, and all the other links are there.
And just go to the show notes. We'll
or
cover
just
them all
put my
there,
name into Google, and it'll all pop up.
That's it.
But I'm an actor, writer, comedian, host, creative director, producer. I kind of one of those people that I get frustrated, so I end up doing everything. But I started out as a kid from Ambler, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia, but it looks like South Philly. It's all row home neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So when I was like 5 and I was a big ham, and I used to go out and my neighbors would be sitting on their steps, or the stoops as they call them. And I would go out, and I had just watched Ed Sullivan. And as a 5-year-old, I would impersonate Ed Sullivan. So now, right here on our show, the fabulous Garbacho brothers, and all these other characters that I heard, and they loved it. And I got a lot of affirmation out of it. And I got the opportunity to have adults laugh, but I had a severe speech impediment. So when I wasn't doing impressions, you could barely understand me because everything was just kind of a mess. And then when I got into first grade, I was diagnosed, and then I did 8 years of speech therapy. And it was 2 times a week for 8 years. And those wonderful speech therapists and speech pathologists didn't know this. They were correcting my speech, but at the same time giving me an education on how to manipulate my voice, on throat placement, nasal placement, actual vocal production, where to produce sound properly, all of these things that I would use later professionally to do Austin Powers, baby. Yeah. Or Dr. Phil, what were you thinking? Or Donald Trump, depending. It depends on who it is. Believe me. So, so that was like the challenge that I had to overcome. And and I'm sure you've had people on with dyslexia and learning disabilities. I've suffered from those too, but I've always knew what I wanted to do, which was be a performer, and that was the career I pursued. And then I was I was an actor in New York, but I found the process very time wasting. I don't know if you've ever been on an audition, but when you go to an audition, it's your time, but you'll be there for 2-3 hours sometimes, and it just seemed like this is a waste. So what I tried to do is just try to change all those things so I could just be performing, writing, performing. So I started working in the corporate world. So instead of having to audition, people started coming to me because I had something unique. So I haven't auditioned in a very long time, unless it's for a film. So I'm always trying to look at a system, figure out how I can change it to work for me. And so those are the things that I kind of focus on in my business. So I shifted from acting in TV and film to doing corporate work, which ended up taking me back to TV. because I was Trump's Conan, I was Kimmel's Conan, I got to work on all these TV shows because I stuck with one thing, which I thought was a better system for me, and it ended up bringing me back to.
What was your favorite thing from doing all the? Because I mean, I was looking through. I mean, you literally have like the character quest. You could do just about anything here. Who's your favorite? And I want to, before we get into all that good stuff, I'm gonna come circle back on this one.
Sure.
I don't want to let you off the hook. I think I found some things in there that I want to uncover a little bit. But
sure.
Favorite person that you can emulate and act like.
I think it's Austin Powers because I've done him all over the world and people love this character. I mean, I'll be on a trade show floor in Thailand and people will smile and go, Austin Powers. I mean, he's not my character. He's Mike Myers' character, but he just brings so much joy and makes so many people so happy. Yeah. I love playing him too because he's very groovy, baby, and he's very physical. Yeah. So it's a great character. I hear that.
So you're spreading joy, positivity, and it's not like, other characters have their dark side, right? Like Trump, for example. You either like him or you hate him. Like there's very little people in between. So it's like although you can do him impeccably, someone who's not going to like Donald Trump is going to hate you for it, and then they're going to associate that hate on you. I'm assuming, right?
Well, yes and no. You met me. I'm generally a very nice person. I try to give off a very positive vibe. So I've had people who knew I was going to go on stage as Trump. This is a classic story. I was in Denver and the person's like, I don't like Donald Trump. And she saw my profile. I did like the main room and she came up afterwards back to where I was originally at. She goes, I like your Donald Trump, which is like the best I can do. If someone doesn't like a character or doesn't know a character, to take it so it's funny and warm enough that they can now look at it objectively.
Right.
And you have all different characters. I have Guy Fieri, which certain people absolutely love and know, and other people have no idea because TV is so fractionalized now, so there's all these different components I'm dealing with characters. Are enough people going to know who it is? Are they going to like it? What's the response going to be? If it's a pro-Trump person, do they think I'm mocking Trump, which I'm not? So there's all these little variables that kind of come in to it now because everybody's so entitled to give you their opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that's a funny arc right now because you actually you're kind of in that space where it's like what was okay a couple years ago is like off limits today, and you can even say some of these things. And have you got any pushback on some of the stand up or the comedian stuff that you've done? Any of the laughs or the jokes?
I've been very lucky for the most part, but what you just said, if you think about Austin Powers back in 96 and 97 when he came out, and those first few years that I was doing him, a lot of corporations were like, oh, we can't have him. He's all about sex and being horny and all this stuff. And I would say, I do corporate. I'm very aware. I said, don't worry, I'll take care of that. And after they see it, they get it. So it's almost like with Trump and Austin and any kind of issues that have to be resolved about a character. I'm smart enough to know how to do that because I'm a professional performer. So that's one of those things. But people are touchy for sure. Everyone has an opinion now. Everyone thinks their opinion has value, which, whatever. I try to be respectful of everybody. But, in front of if I hear someone say one thing on one side or one thing on the other side, no matter what, as a person who's just very open, I'm going to try to explain to them what's going on. If they're not going to hear it, they're not going to hear it. So, that it is what it is in that respect.
Got it. Let's get into the background a little bit. Are you married, kids, anything?
I've been married twice. I'm now engaged for the third time. So I'm like Trump. I'm going for the third one. It's going to be incredible. So no kids, though. Both marriages, no kids.
Okay. Background in faith. Are you a man of spirituality?
I'm a man of spirituality. I talk to God I was raised Roman Catholic and then I discovered Buddhism, which really isn't a religion. It's more of a way of life. They gratefully, they kind of interlock. Mm-hmm. So Jesus is definitely in the pantheon of people I talk to and specifically who I pray to.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some similar in Arkan history. Never really went to Buddhism, but I did, go from Catholicism to like nothing. And I would just say, I called it Craigism, karma, do to others what I want done to myself, if you will.
Right.
And literally followed that for years. And I talked about it on the podcast a little bit, and then found faith later with Christianity and kind of, just really my own interpretation of the Bible. Have you come across in anything that you've done where you've had like a, pride in the game, and you're like, what, I really don't want to do this because it goes against what I feel? It sounds like you're really much a professional, and you're very adaptive to your environment. But is there anything that stuck out, or something that was like, in true in you, and you're like, no, I can't either do this, or no, I'm going to represent me because it's about me, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's been a couple of times. It's funny because a lot of it comes back to Trump, but there was a pretty well-known rapper who had a song that was an anti-Trump song, and they wanted me to go on tour with them and to open their show. And I was like, no, for multiple of reasons. Like, I'm 59 years old. I don't need to be on a tour bus with a bunch of 20-somethings smoking pot crossing the country. But also, I was like, I don't need to do that. That's not my audience. Yep. But then I've been asked to do events where they want Trump in a dunking tank. I'm like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And then there was another rapper who wanted to have Trump tied up in a chair, and he was interrogating. I was like, not happening. Mm-hmm. So,
well, that's good.
No matter what I do, I want it to be positive.
Yeah.
It can be satirical, but I want it to be positive. You know what I mean? Any image that goes out, anything that I create, I want people to find humor in it, find light in it, find comedy in it, just to lift people up. Before I go on stage, and it doesn't matter which character or where I am, I try to take a moment and just pray and say, Holy Father, that's the Catholic part of me. Holy Father, this isn't for me. This is for that audience. This is for that 400 women in Tampa who just need a break, who just want to laugh. So let me do that. Release me from me for the next 35 minutes and let me be funny.
I love
and
it.
that's what I do every time. Awesome. Every single time. And I ground myself before I go out. And then because of my speech impediment, I do a bunch of exercises so I don't trip up when I'm speaking. Yeah.
Got it.
That's
Tell
the
me
last
about
thing.
that.
I don't want to miss that because that's important.
Yeah. Tell me about that more, like that early career. So you have a speech impediment, you're going through school. Kids are nasty, man. They're like, they're tough kids. And did you find yourself on the butt end of the jokes? Did you find this like a painful experience, or were you well liked? Because I could see, in some people, not that I've cross-examined here, but like I could see and read into some people's stories that they kind of like a lot of lifters, bodybuilders, if you will, right. They get into lifting or fighting because they've been bullied, and it's a defense mechanism. It's bulletproofing their body. Right. Did you get funny, if you will, as a defense mechanism because you might have been the bunt of jokes? Like, help me out with that. And I could be completely off, but I'm just curious.
No, it's funny because I don't know what came first. Because I was doing comedy, like I said, at like 5 years old. It was like almost from the time I could speak, even though it was, the impediment. I did have a lot of bullies in our neighborhood because it was a tough row home neighborhood. I mean, we were jam-packed together. My brother Michael and I, because we thought about this, in our neighborhood alone, we counted 20 bullies. These guys who would sucker punch you in the ear, beat you down. And that was, so this is the late 60s, early 70s. I think, and I don't want to talk out of turn, obviously I don't have any scientific information, but it seemed that bullying was much more prevalent then. There were just more of them. Mm-hmm. But I was a funny guy, and I could never understand, in my mind, I'm like, I'm a nice guy. Why are you kicking my ass? That's the part I could never wrap my brain around. But I was an easy target. You know what I mean? I had to wear a patch. I had a floating eye. I talked funny. So I think a lot of their aggression that they were being put upon by their father, because shit rolls downstream, was just being put onto me because I was physically an easy target.
And so how long did you feel like that went on for? Because, it's really funny. I went to this mastermind fitness event, and the one speaker of all the people that were at the event, was the psychologist, or was she, and she wasn't technically a psychologist. She was like, just a personal development coach, somewhat like me, but she was really just like heavy into it. And I was blown away by it. So I literally shifted my fitness business a little bit, much more to the mindset. But she talked about like the scars that we have, like that just etched trauma into our bodies. What do you think you lived with, from that experience? I've never really, I've had a few incidents as a young kid. I was a skinny ectomorph kind of guy. So like I've had a few incidents, but I had an older brother who gave me some protection, if you will. But, what do you feel that like did to you as you were growing up, or those things as you were, maturing and growing into life?
Well, it's interesting because the sense of safety, my father was physically abusive. So I was getting it in the house and outside of the house. So it was just one of those things I learned to live with, because I didn't ever physically go back after any of those guys. Remarkably, because I have people know who I am. I've had some of those guys used to beat me up as a kid, find me on Facebook and say they were sorry, which actually I found very moving. That meant a lot to me. And they had said it was their father. Ironically, they were beaten by their father. They became bullies. I was beaten by my father. I became a comedian. So we all have different outlets, how we process this stuff. I think the most important thing for me is I'm kind of relentless at my optimism of human beings. And I just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And I'm not going to beat you down. I'm just going to wear you down with my personality. And because that's all I have. Yeah. That's all I have.
And where do you think that came from, that positivity?
I have
your father
no idea. I think it's just a divine gift I was given.
Was your mom in the picture still alive?
She passed away. She had her issues too. So my brothers and I were kind of on our own to a certain extent. They were there, which is obviously really, really important. They were physically there. Also, my dad was an incredibly hard worker. He was a steel worker. He worked really, really hard. He was just a very very frustrated guy. And so my brothers and I, and my mom, caught his frustration through anger and through violence and through, hitting us and striking us. That was the only way he would have to build up, have an explosion, hit us, and then he could come down, but he could never come down without that. So that was,
he needed a better outlet than you guys. But I hear what you're saying, and I think a lot of people are out there with that same stress. And how about today in society, right? Like, I don't think that there's ever been more stress that's, categorized across the board, where some people do it to themselves, but like with social media, with the media's attention, with just like everything coming at us and how fast we move. I heard Ed Milet say today, I'm not sure when he did this podcast, it might have been with Tom Bilyeu, but I think he was speaking.
By the way, two great speakers, those guys.
And Ed Milet talked about time in being the dumbest thing around when it's compared to like a 24 hours, because back in the day when we had horse and buggy, those people were using the same time frame that we have, and so the time of sending a message out and having it being received would be days. And so now that we could do things instantly, talking about like the 24 hour is kind of like almost backward, or just basically doesn't make so much sense on the way we could produce productivity and get things done. So it's like shortening the day cycle and things of that nature. And I know it's just obviously the world will spin and we have that light cycle, but he's like saying another way to like frame our minds is thinking that, hey, we should be shortening our days or cycles of work and release and play. So therefore we're not on this always on 8 to 10 hours of work, and we're just being bombarded with, messages coming here, notifications coming here. So like the overload of information sometimes, or technology.
100%. There's just so much. And I fall prey to it too, because, I love all those guys that you mentioned, and I want to read everything, and I want to read every book, and I want to see every podcast. And then you get to the point, and I got to do a job, and I got to travel, and I got to do this. And it's just, there's not enough hours in the day. How do I do it? And at some point, there are days when I take my phone and I'll just shut it off. Just shut my phone, and I'll literally shut this off and just do, if I'm at my desk, I'll just do whatever I can without having a computer, because that constant having to refocus, which is, part of meditation, but that can wear you out too. I have to be focused. I got to get back to center. It's amazing. And I think we all have to be hyper aware of it. Overachievers, people like me who are like ADD and want to get everything done and be creative and all this stuff. I have to be like, okay, you got to stop, and you got to build in that stop time. And there's one of these things on my iWatch, where it tells you to stop and take a breath, which I didn't install. Yeah. But the first time it did it, I was like, oh, thank you so much. Somebody told me to stop.
Give me permission.
Yes, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. So great. I hear what you're saying about the time thing, 100% from Ed.
So you take some blocks. Do you are you a man of to-do lists, calendars, or you just
I'm a to-do list guy, and I have a set to-do list in the morning, no matter what. Wake, gratitude, make my bed, get dressed first. But I go down that list, and that'll be stretching and yoga, journaling. So that list is set, and that's my personal time.
Yeah.
And then move over to the set list for the workday. And the last thing on my personal list is a reminder to prioritize the priorities. I have to remind myself that, because I've got hamster brain, and as a comedian, and I have to look up what's happening in the news, and I have to do this, and then I go down that rabbit hole. But I need to prioritize the priority, because I'm 59. I'm going to be 60 in November. I'm very lucky. I make a living being a performer, but I look at the fact that my dad lived to be 65. My grandfather lived to be 85. Just there's less time now. As I look down the road, there's less time than there was this way. So every minute counts, in the sense of not wasting it.
Yeah.
Stop. And I say this to myself sometimes, like, stop wasting time. Because I've got to be my own parent and say that to myself, No,
it's true.
Not myself, because I'm I run my own business. You run your own business. If I'm on a plane or in a hotel, my brain chemistry changes and I can focus a little more. But when you're in your house and you have so much to do, it's a little harder to.
Yeah. This environment where we live, and you've been doing it for years, and so have I, but some people now with COVID, they get the luxury of doing it. And, now I'm a consultant for, 2020 and helping the mortgage people out in that aspect. And it's just about every call, it's me just basically, getting people to have a strategic schedule, be very intentional with their time, understanding that, they have to, get, Bonanza's over, right? The interest rates are going up and things are going to be harder for that market. And so it's like just saying, hey, the easy stuff is over, and you have to really, treat this as like a grind, just like you were when you're out there, trying to get these gigs and do different things. Like it's time to get hard, but this is a great time to build the foundation, especially when there's blood in the water, things are challenging, people are uncertain. That's the time for high performers to really do well in that market. So I call it opportunity at this point in time with the way the market's shaping up, because it's going to separate the men from the boys, if you will.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And if your network is not in place, because I have to have a network to keep getting work and building out. And, a lot of people think they're going to build their engine in flight. Like, it doesn't work that way. Once the plane's in the air, it's in the air. You better have that network when you land. So that's one of the things when I talk to people is you cannot build a jet engine in flight. You need to do your homework. You need to build your network. That all has to be done. If you have downtime, be working on that. If you're lucky enough to have downtime.
I posted today kind of like a morning routine, which is, I'm glad that you have one and we talked about it. Are you an early morning riser? What
I read Hal's book, The Miracle Morning, and that changed me. I'm a 5:30 a.m. guy.
Yeah. I talked about this morning about kind of just having very intentional morning, because the first thing most people do, they wake up, they check their email or look at social media. Two things that are immediately going to just steal your attention, and you're going to say, if you're looking at social media and you see somebody who, you're following because you appreciate what they have, but it's more or less you're following because you're envious of them. Immediately, now all you're doing is talking down to yourself and saying, look at this person and they're killing it, because they're likely posting on social media because they feel good about their body. And if you don't, now you're feeling bad about you. Go look in the mirror, and it's just a vicious spiral. So for people that are in that weight loss position, then people that are performing at work, they're checking emails. Now they're not focusing on what they should do, which is basically take that time in the morning and get their mind right, get their get their morning routine, like you said, focus on what they should be doing. I talk about faith, fitness, fellowship, and finances. And
So
from faith,
important.
obviously, get into the Word of God, or talk about like, what does God want me to do today to fulfill His honor.
Right.
If it's fitness, you're going to find when you're going to train and put it down on a calendar so you could, make it an affirmation statement. If it's fellowship, how can I honor my wife tonight, my spouse, my significant other? What can I do to make their day different? If I have kids, what can I do to impact that kid's life or teach them today? If I have somebody who's, in my network, who can I reach out to that may need me to pour into them? Or what baggage can I let go that I'm holding on to that's dragging me down? There's so many different ways that you could think about, that, but like having those statements in the morning and saying them or writing them down, and then auditing yourself at the evening and say, okay, well, what didn't I do today? And why didn't I do it? And just continuing to get better at that, you're going to find production just go through the roof of just being intentional. And then when you hit your head at the pillow at the end of the night, fulfillment's going to happen, because a lot of times we could be stressed all day and nothing felt like it got done, although you worked, but just because there's in a business as an entrepreneur, there's always work to do. It's like cutting your grass,
it's
showering.
endless.
And so it's like, if you judge the completion of the total, game over, you're dead. Right. So like, I think we're judging ourselves differently than we should be. We should be judging ourselves on how we feel when we hit the pillow. Did we fulfill the things that we set to do, or did we just put too much on our plate and now we're just stressed out going to sleep? And we're going to repeat that.
I like what you said, auditing the day, because somebody had told me, this was a long time ago, like before you close your eyes, not in a critical way, but what could I have done better today? Mm-hmm. Where could I have been a little more efficient? Where could I have been nicer? Mm-hmm. Where could I have been, all those things you said before, like just that review at the end of the day, and kind of discharge it and then start the next day, and hopefully in a better place. Yeah.
Right on. Cool. So I'm glad that you're into the professional development and, seeking different counsels and mentors. When did that start for you? Was that always something you did? When did you start reading and getting into, listening to motivators and things of that nature?
I think it was somewhere in college, and I somehow I always thought books, because I have dyslexia and some learning disabilities, and I think I was at a garage sale or something, but I thought books on cassette were really interesting, even back then. And somebody you go to a garage sale, sometimes you'll find something really cool. This was The Psychology of Success by the guy who trained all the Olympic athletes. And it was a case. It was like 16 cassette tapes. Wow. And it was all of his research, and it was fascinating. And I remember thinking, like, this is really interesting. Like, here's a guy who does research, who works with all of these, premier athletes, and does all of these things. And he's put all this information out there, like, for me, I can use this. And then that kind of started the road of like the books. Because probably in the 80s, when I was in college, 81, I went to college, a lot of this stuff, it was still it was kind of a new thing. And then I say through the 80s, it's like a ton of these books came out, and I found them really interesting. And then I started reading them and picking things up. And I was like, if I can just get one thing out of each of these books, it's really, really valuable. And that Psychology of Success, I think that was the title, basically said, in your mind, if you rehearse something in your mind, they were showing that the athlete's muscles were firing the same way as if they were on the track. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how strong your mind is. Yeah. That you can overcome so many things. Your mind, even though it might be screwed up, if you can guide your mind to that next place, or get someone else to help guide you, or have a coach, whatever it is, you can move on in your life. You can move beyond the things that are holding you back. You can move to the place where you want to be, where you're a success. And it could be, a financial success. It could be a relationship success. It could be whatever it is, but there's a way to do it. There's no need to get bogged down in self-pity or anything like that. Sure, you should have emotions for yourself, but don't wallow in those things. There's a way out, and there's so many things. And what I've learned, these books are filled with this stuff, but for me, what I've learned is I need constant external support. So I'll read something and get a few months out of it. Then I need the next thing. And that'll take me to the next place and to the next place. And that's why I had mentioned before we started, like someone like Tim Ferriss, one of his books is Tools of the Titans. I don't know if you've read that one.
I haven't read it, but I've heard it.
My God, it's just hundreds of interviews with peak performers. And I got so much out of it. It's not like a book, it's not a narratively structured book, but every single one of these interviews, I was like, oh my God, that's great. That's awesome. This is great. These things that I could just carry on. It really motivated me. I finished it like last month and I was just like really turned on. And that was probably, like right around, I was probably finishing it right around the time we were in Tampa doing the show. So I was kind of on like a high, like, all right, I'm going to finish this one and get on to the next one.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think some people will, and I'm glad it works for you. How do you deal with like the overwhelm or basically the shiny object syndrome? Because a lot of people in fitness, and let me speak to a couple different industries as we unpack this one. Yeah. In fitness, I literally was going to do a talk or a rant. I'll probably say a rant today of people like why they're not getting results. They're not getting results because they're always jumping from one thing to the next because something sounds cooler or maybe someone's more popular on social media so they'll go follow this guy's routine, but they're not consistent enough to follow and get a result. So for you to take in all this information, I think you're probably really just good at interpreting how it can work for you and taking the pieces that you could identify to your life is probably much more of a professional because you've been able to take in from different places. But like, how might you talk to the person who might be listening and, is doing just that, taking in all this information, buying all the ebooks, buying all the products. They have a list of this folder that they haven't even got through. And yet they're still they just feel they're drowning. So like, how can they take pieces and not be overwhelmed by it, but like use the pieces for them? And like, what's your strategy for like,
here's how I equate it. Cause what you just said, I've, processed in my mind. There's only so many universal truths about working out, about food, about mental health. You know what I mean? There's only so many. And I'll bring it back to religion. So as a Catholic, I would go to church every Sunday and hear the gospel and hear the sermon. And essentially, in a couple of years, you've heard pretty much everything. You know what I mean? You know the story of Christmas, you know the story of Easter, but you don't stop going. You know what I mean? Right. You need that. We as humans need that external reinforcement of something we already know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need those cookies are crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you may need to be reminded over and over again. And that's just how humans are. We want what we want. We want to be in shape. We want to be healthy. We don't want diabetes. But boy, we're at the holiday Christmas party at our friend's house, and those cookies look great, and those chocolate donuts look great, and this looks great. And you're always at that battle. That's why I think having a community, going back to community, working out with a group of people, having faith, or in this case, having someone repeat the same things to you, all those things are components that you have to have. And going back to specifically what you said, there is a lot. So you've got to zero in on what works for you and kind of not push away, but okay, I don't need this and I don't need this. I've already set up this, and this. For me, I know the authors that I like. I'll keep coming back to Tim Ferriss because he's really hit it for me. He's saying the same stuff over and over. You know what I mean? And I'm aware of that, but I like the way he says it, and it's a great reminder. It's like having a great priest. When St. Joseph's, where I grew up, we had some really, mind you, it's like the late 60s again, early 70s. We had, Father Hellduzer, which was his real name. He was a World War II veteran. He was fire and brimstone. I loved that. And then Father Gallagher, old Irish guy, put you right to sleep. And then there was the hippie priest. Out of those three priests, I really like Father Hellduzer because he really brought it down. This guy had served in World War II, and he told you how it was. So, you're going to gravitate towards whoever is going to help you the most if you're going in that direction. Conversely, it's very easy to be drawn in the wrong space with the person who's like, oh, forget it. Just have a donut.
Yep.
Live a little.
Yep.
Stop killing yourself. But if you break on your own discipline, then then you don't have anybody.
That's right.
You've got to be the advocate for yourself. You've got to represent yourself, not the guy who's miserable and wants to feed you candy, or is also or in great shape and like, well, he's in great shape and he's eating crappy, so I guess I can do it too.
Mhm.
You know who you are, you know your body type, you know how you work, and you know what you have to do. It's really to a certain extent, it's that simple. It's not so much the information, because if it was information, we'd all be ripped and walking around like this.
Yep.
It's inculcating it and implementing it, throwing the crap out of your pantry or kitchen, and living the way you want to live. You can't be super healthy and go to Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah. I'm going to write the word invoke, because that just came to me when you were talking that, I know it's like invoke the spirit, but like you almost, like you just said, it's like the words could be said, but if they're not invoked into you, if you're not like actually breathing them into your being and actually taking them and making them make sense and making them make action, then it doesn't really matter, because then they're just words that you could read.
Did you get to see Les Brown speak?
Yeah.
I mean, he could be reading the phone book, and he's so powerful that, I was backstage. I couldn't even see him because he was just photos on the screen. But even now, a month later, what he said was so powerful, because he knows how to connect with people, and he's one of those people you go, God, he was born, poor, black, learning disabilities, barefoot, and now he's one of the top motivational and inspirational speakers in the world with 12 best-selling books, and he did it through sheer determination. And I just and there could be 10 people like that who all come on stage, but it's the way he speaks, and like you said, that it invokes something in you. That's that connection. That's why you have to find that person you connect with. The trainer, the author, whoever it is, the speaker, whoever that is. Find that person, and it may be like that. You can ride that person for 5 years, and you may become bored of them. But find that person, because you need that. You need that as human beings. You need a pastor who's strong, or a priest who's strong, or an orator who's strong, or a philosopher that you follow.
That's a great message. You're like pushing the coaching. Do you have a personal coach? Do you have somebody in your circle that you go to? Or
I have a trainer that I go to, but not a personal coach. But believe me, I think about a personal coach all the time.
And you're doing a lot of the professional development by reading and different things of that nature. I know that you just mentioned that, Tim Ferriss is big of you. Who's your top 5, top 3, if you don't have a top 5?
Well, I'd say Ryan Holiday, because I'm really getting into all the stoicism. Tim, for sure. Who's the other guy? He was I'm sorry, I'm turning away from the camera. Gary Vaynerchuk. I love him. He's not really, he really kind of helped me fire up with business stuff. And I'm blanking on my other ones, so forgive me. Robert Greene. I love all his stuff on power, human nature. It's always so fascinating to me when he can take a story and then finish a story and you're like, oh my God, that was brilliant. And it just directly impacts how you think about something. I just find that amazing.
Is he StoryBrand? Is he the one who did StoryBrand? Who's the one who there's an author that's like, how to help you tell a story.
Yeah.
Is that him?
That's not him. But I for some reason, StoryBrand just literally came up.
Great book. I've read it. I forget the author, and I'll probably credit him afterwards. But yeah, there's some amazing books. There's amazing speakers. There's amazing YouTube. Like, the motivation's there if you want it, and you can go for it. Like, if you're listening and you're finding yourself in a stuck place, I understand that overwhelm happens, and it's just one more thing you can do. But if you power up your day with an affirmation from somebody, just throw on YouTube. Like, part of like a morning routine for me is to like, I'm really trying to be very intentional about like putting some just sending airwaves at me that are just positive and going to lift me. As much as I'm a motivational person and I have the cast of the people that I motivate myself, it's like we still have to pump into ourselves, and we still have to have our mentors. And you mentioned something about repetitive messages. I have one here, a coach that I work with. Coach Michael Burr, and he's a big time speaker, speaks to, in the real estate game as well. And he goes around. He invited me on a private jet one day. He's got a private jet here, lives in Murfreesboro. And I just asked the guy for a cup of coffee because I learned that he was a big time guy, in my gym. I own a gym here. And I was like, hey, man, I'd love to just unpack your brain a little bit if you'd give me the time. And, I didn't really know how big he was, right? I didn't know how much success I would say, just by the money, but where he was at. But I really wanted to ask him the hard questions, like, why do you keep doing it if you have all the money? Some of these people like Dean Grazioli, who's his partner, their biggest name, what's his name? Can't think of his name. He's invented motivational speaking. Shoot, it'll come to me. It's embarrassing that I forgot his name, but
I know you always freeze on these
man. He money master the game. What's his oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'll come back to it. It'll come back to me.
It's not Brian Tracy, right?
No, it's literally like the most motivational person you could probably think of, like anyone who would know, like any Joe Rand.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins, thank you.
Okay.
How do I forget Tony Robbins? But
and by the way, he's on my list too. Now that I'm remembering,
how do I forget?
And I've seen him. I'm sure you've seen him speak. He's
phenomenal. But I mean, just having all those things available for you, you guys, there's no excuse to be let down and in these places. But I do believe that you're mentioning something that's super powerful, is having a community, having someone to bounce ideas off of. I heard that guy Patty speak. He's a UFC fighter, Irish guy. I guess recently he just had a buddy that passed away. He took his own life. And he was talking about mental health and essentially how men don't believe that they can have a conversation with other men. And that's really why part of what Battle Plan is for me and my coaching services, to every Wednesday, Thursday, we just had a really powerful call last night where I just had something on my heart. Ben Carson spoke on Sunday at my church. And he had a really great message of look, we've had progress. I grew up in a place where I, just like Les Brown, where I had just about nothing when growing up. And my mom was, cleaning houses, and she went to the homes of with the wealthy, and she noticed that they didn't have TVs and that they had a lot of books. And so she's like, I'm going to do that. Obviously it went over a fart at church at home, but she implemented that strategy. And Ben Carson went from the dumbest guy in his class or in his school to the smartest, in a certain amount of time. So he really was able to apply himself and push. But those stories are phenomenal. But it's just one of those things where you get a message and it convicts you a little bit. And I would say the best way to internalize a message is to share it with somebody else. So if you are empowered by something, have something, you could share it by journaling. You could share it by speaking. You could share it by having a conversation with somebody and pay it forward. But I would say, don't hold on to that stuff. Too many guys, don't believe in themselves enough to be the leaders. And so part of my group is what I'm trying to do right now is look for almost not disciples, but more ambassadors, people that I could lead into. So as much as I was started off in the game was transformational coaching, change people's bodies and health, mindset is so much more attractive to me now, because I know if I could change their mindset, I could change their body. And if I have them in my wings weekly, I could speak into them and invoke them, if you will, with what they already know they should be doing, and just consistently push that message back on them. But it's really cool to hear you reaffirm what we're doing and the coaching process and how that works.
Yeah, and I don't, like I said, I don't have a coach, but I'm in a mastermind group with 5 other guys who are all in the corporate speaking, keynote, entertainment world. We're all a little different, but we all overlap in that very particular space. So we'll do a call. So it's best practices. 2 of the guys originally it was just 3 of us, and then we grew to 6. But then because of that, because you're having these weekly things about business, then it becomes personal. Then you kind of branches out and becomes more supportive. Yeah. So, and I believe we as humans, we're tribal. We are tribal people, for good and for bad. Yeah. But if you're not tribal at all and you don't have people around you, that's not good. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So to have people that you can bounce things off of, and there'll be times when I'll be putting out an email blast and I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And it's just to get a response from 5 guys. I wouldn't say that. Oh yeah, definitely go ahead and say that. That's fine. Even if it's something simple like that, knowing that there is a group of men or women, whoever you are, but knowing that there's people there that you can get an honest response from, who are in the same shared space that you're in, is really just, it's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
And it's a place to go. We all want to belong, and we all want our group of friends, but you need sometimes something more than just that. Guys, you're going to go out drinking with. You need professionals who want to help each other move to the next level.
Yeah. I have a group that I belonged to at one point. It was called C12. Have you ever heard of these guys? C12?
No.
They're like kind of like a corporate, kind of like C-suite execs, but it's like spiritual business leadership. And so there's like an element of like spirituality. So I did that for like a season there. And I found some good things out of it. I took some good takeaways. But one thing you mentioned right there, which is, and you also mentioned it earlier, having a person who's willing and able to be honest with you, because too many people have yes people in their lives and don't speak up when they should. There's a lot of people that just are too afraid to buck the system. They're a little beta, and that's part of what Ben Carson's message was this week at our church, is saying that, look, we probably have a really loud, a really quiet majority, in this world right now. I think, with everything going on in the world, and I don't care where my politics go, it doesn't matter if I share them or not. Most people know that it's more common sense. I don't really try to per se that I'm super right or super anywhere. I'm kind of just more common sense. I was a Democrat at one point. I would definitely say I'm a conservative now if I was to put myself anywhere, but I would be more libertarian, just like, I'd rather just look at the issue and come up with a decision, not based upon a political party, but, having the ability to just be honest with yourself and be honest with somebody else who's asking a fair assessment of something and say, hey, it might hurt your feelings, but this is what I think. Having that true person to be able to do that is amazing,
Yeah, it's very valuable, because there are people who are yes people, and there's yes people who would like to say something, but they don't, because they don't want to get into it, and then they got it. You know what I mean? They have to explain their position. It's that'll work. That'll work. Just it's that kind of thing. And you're like, no. Please, like, for real, tell me what you think. Sometimes you got to drag it out of people.
Yeah.
But that's where you get that's where the rubber hits the road, where you can get an honest assessment. Listen, we're all like creators to a certain extent. We're all putting things out there. And for that reason, you need people who are going to give you honest feedback.
Yeah.
We're obviously wise and making a living and impacting people, but we need counsel too. I know it sounds silly, but I put a chart together just in my mind because, I have an accountant, I have a bookkeeper, I have this, I have that, and then I put an advisory board together for myself, like a personal advisory board, people I've met over the years in my business, in the corporate entertainment business, and some of the other ones. And I said, hey, would you just be, when the time comes, will you be my advisor? So I have an org chart of the John D. Domenico company. There's a real company, but there's not a real company. There's not a real hierarchy. This is it. This is the front office. This is and the back office. So in my mind, though, I have that image. People do vision boards, but my vision board is, this is the company. These are the people that surround me that I can go to, along with the guys in the brain trust, in the mastermind group. And sometimes you forget. Oh yeah, that's right. This guy does. For me, because like, this is my wig person. This is my wardrobe person. This is the guy who builds my props. It's like, oh, there really is a group of people around me, and sometimes you forget.
Yeah.
Because you pay them, but they're really, you pay them like a company would pay them. Yeah. So it just helps to go, you do have an organization surrounding you.
And that's so good. I love that idea, and I'm going to steal it. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to use it. But I also like it from like, even people that don't have the company, even in their life, to like just understand who they need to reach out to in certain situations, right? Like, there's nothing worse than taking your problems to somebody who could care less about them. Or some version of like, you might just upset them more than you are, and now you just open up a can of worms. So it's like, I would say journaling. I think you mentioned, did you say you do journaling or meditation?
Every morning. That's on that list.
Yeah.
I want to be honest about it, because it's on there, and there'll be days when I just put the date on.
Yeah.
And I'll write good, because I'm so pressed for time. But I got to do it, I've got to like at least do that. Like that's the rock bottom minimum. But at least if I'm doing the minimum, then there's something.
I would say for something I'm going to start taking on, because like right now I'm in the course of like building a course truly for like my online transformation clients. And again, everything's going to be going from like most people find me just because of the body stuff, but it's probably going to segue into the more mindset and professional development and things of that nature. But I want to take them from a standpoint of like when you're in that rage or when you're in that stress, get it on paper, because when you unpack it again, now there's no emotion in it. You can't make choices with emotion, and so you can't make anything healthy anyway with emotion. So after the emotion's been spent, you can actually read the lines and be like, yeah, this probably needs to change, or, oh, you know what, I'm glad I didn't bring this to somebody, especially people with like, relationships. Like as much as we're supposed to be best friends between, husband, spouse, and, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, there are some things you probably just shouldn't be bringing to these people because you're only upsetting them or creating more space or worse in your relationship.
Yeah,
so it's like,
I 100% agree with that. If you really feel that, like, at least wait a day or two, definitely put it on paper, because it's very easy in the moment to bitch about your spouse, your significant other, and take it out of the relationship for affirmation for yourself. Aren't I right? Aren't I right? Mm-hmm. Because you don't realize it's very selfish to do that, to put that on a friend.
Yeah.
A negative about your partner. It's very dangerous, and it's very self-serving. So write it down, keep it to yourself, and if it's really bad, get some couples therapy. Yeah. But it's such an easy. It's like having a piece of candy or something, because it's so easy to go, she's such a slob. Am I right? You've seen the house.
Yeah.
And she's, and all you're doing is building, like you said, like building this divide and building, my first wife was a therapist. And the reason I'm very adamant about this is because I did it. Yeah. And it's one of the things I feel horrible about. But she used to say to me, don't build a case against me. She was smart enough to know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I was building a case, and I was putting my facts in, and I was getting negative consultation to get affirmation from my friends. Like, and that's a bad thing to do. Yeah. It's just, it serves no one. Even you think you're helping yourself by pushing the demise of the relationship, and all it is it's just not healthy.
Even inside the relationship, when you're speaking to your significant other and you're bringing money problems or these other things that are that she couldn't be affected by as well, I still think that's another place where it's like, does this help or hurt? Is this helping me only, and it's going to hurt her, and she's going to share this burden with me? Why do I want someone else to carry my yoke? Right. If you think of it that way. So it's like, do I need somebody to carry this burden, or is this my own that I can solve? And if I need to release, then there's probably a person for that. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, being very intentional about who you share what with.
Yes.
It's
a big, like what you just said is absolute gold. Be very intentional about who you share what with, especially when it comes to relationship stuff. And other things about journals, I literally have like just boxes and boxes of them. The patterns. You go back, and you can go back 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. And if you're still dealing with the same stuff, that should be a trigger for you to like, maybe I should go a little deeper on this. Because that's one of the best things about long-term journaling is to say, oh, I actually overcame this. I moved beyond this. I'm not dealing with this issue anymore. It's a really wonderful thing to track your life, because if you don't do it, no one will do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you're being honest with yourself, it makes all the difference in the world.
And you forget some good stuff that goes on in there too, right? Like, a lot of times that you'll experience something and you won't share it, and then you'll just be like, man, and it could give you a lift one day, just something, a good quote. Like I'm a person who just takes and dumps. And so like my phone, I have notes everywhere. I'm literally hiring an assistant right now to organize all my crap. And because I'm just like, this is not business production for me. This is just like organized chaos. Help me do that. And so I can use it again. Because there was a reason I copied it down in the first place, because I wanted to say it out loud somewhere, or basically use it as like a trigger for a conversation for something. But I'm like, it's not my job to go ahead and organize my mess. It's someone to go ahead and look at where my brain was at one point and say, okay, what was Craig thinking? What kind of category does this go? Because like, I'm trying to be very intentional also with like my business production. Like, hey, can I hire someone to do something that I should not be doing? Yes. And try to like go
100%.
into that. So
yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, talk to me about one last thing, because I know we're approaching this hour here and I want to keep you. Is there anything that you would have done differently in life? And if so, how would you have avoided it today?
I think about this sometimes, and I was always, one of the things was, what I regret is certain times not being 100% honest, going along to get along. And it's, those are the things I would have done differently. And I'll give you one small thing. It sounds silly. It's when I was in 7th grade. They had just built a brand new school, and a new middle school. And it was a pod system. Basically, it was 4 massive classes, and it was wide open. And I hated it. I hated it because it was really noisy, and I have ADHD, and someone would move 25 feet away and I'd see it because out of my peripheral vision. And I got selected to be on the committee with a couple of the teachers, a couple of the students, and to do like a review of this new system that they spent millions of dollars on. And I was so, what's the right word? I was so codependent at the time. I was like, they spent a lot of money on this. They don't want to hear anything negative. Yeah. So I was, because I was in a house, you have to consider my household, what I was dealing with. So I didn't want any conflict. So I was like, oh, it's really great. It's really great. I'm learning a lot, and I really enjoy it. And I didn't. I hated it. I hated it. And I just wish I had. It's a simple thing, but those things build over time.
Yes, they do.
Until you get whacked in the face, and then you're like, I don't need to be. I'm not in the army. I don't have to be compliant and march 20 miles. This is someone who really wants my opinion. And I wasn't only doing myself a disservice, I was doing them a huge disservice, because here's a student saying how great it was, and I hated it, and I couldn't learn. So that's a microcosm of a bunch of things that happened to me over time that I've learned, like going back to getting an honest answer from somebody about something. It's better to be honest. It's a disservice to you and the other person when you're not being honest.
I agree,
100%. Those are my regrets.
Love that. Yeah. That's great. Good example. Anything you want to share with them before you go? Any words of wisdom? Anything that they should knowing the channel and knowing what we discussed?
You just everything that I said, that we are at a time in history that no matter what you're dealing with, alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, whatever it is, on the negative side, that there is a group out there, there's a 1-800 number, there's research, there's people who really care. If you're having, if you're dealing with something very dark, you mentioned suicide, there are people out there who want to help you, who want to get you to the next level. We're so lucky. I bring this up. My brother, George, drank himself to death. He was an alcoholic, and he just would not accept any help. And I said to him at one point, George, we live at a point in history where you can get away from alcoholism. You can succeed. He was a smart guy. He was a very intelligent, graduated top of his class from LaSalle University, but drank himself to death. There's people out there who want to help you. The knowledge is there. You just have to want it. And whatever it is, you just have to want it. And people will rise up and help you out and take you to the next level.
That's awesome, and I'm sorry for your loss, but a very powerful message, and I think it's a great message for right now. Just with as much conflict and just narratives being put at you that may not be your own. You may have something completely different on your heart, but if you hear something so many times, you might just believe it as well. And so I would say, really look within, start journaling, and getting your thoughts on paper, what you truly feel. Although you may not have the friendship circles to say what you may want to say, because I understand how cancel culture and all the rest of it works. There are circles that you can share that information with if you felt like it. And so, if you are listening, I would say do your research to, find the group and the tribe that's going to work with you and help lift you up. So right on, John. It was a pleasure, man. I'm so happy that we got a chance to do this. I'm glad I got a chance to meet you. You are welcome to put me on your advisory board if you ever felt like you wanted to talk to me.
Absolutely.
I would be honored. But I'm super stoked for this. This will not be the last time we talk. I'm sure of that. And hopefully I see you on stage one time again so I can share some laughs.
Yeah, come to Las Vegas. We'll hang out. We'll work out together.
Right on. I'll catch you later.
All right, man. Thank you.
Have a great one.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
See ya.